Meyer to please approach with what, do you have guests with you today? If they would also approach. This is an act relating to postpartum depression care. And Senator, if you would, please introduce yourself for the record as your guest also, and you all will have the floor.
Thank you, Senator Carroll, and thank you for our Family Services Committee. My name is Shelley Funky Frohmeyer, and I'm Senator from District 24, which is Campbell, Pendleton, Bracken, and a sliver of Kenton. So grateful to be here today with Christina Libby, a mom that will share her testimony, as well as Dr. Ashley Belcher, a psychologist who specializes in women's health. And just by way of introduction to the bill, there is a sub to the title, and I did confirm with the bill writer this morning that perhaps you didn't get that far enough ahead.
Okay. If you don't care, let's go ahead and approve the committee sub,
Okay.
please. I have a motion. I have a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Committee sub is approved.
Wonderful. And then, Senator Carroll, we also have a title sub. And the title sub is to acknowledge mental health, focusing on perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, though I think it says perinatal mental health.
Okay, if the committee would please stand easy.
I apologize for the freshman errors here. How easy it is to have a dry mouth.
Okay, we are good. Go ahead and proceed with the committee sub, and then we will adopt the title amendment at the end.
Okay, thank you. So with the title amendment, we do acknowledge the importance of understanding postpartum depression, but we provided the title amendment to express a broader need for maternal mental health. And you'll hear more about that from Dr. Ashley Belcher. But in making this change, we felt like the language would more completely express the issue and reflect the actions that we're proposing to help resolve. And I'm grateful for Christina Libby. I'll turn it over to her next. But I do want to acknowledge that this bill really is to ensure greater access and information resources about perinatal mental health care. We really understand that pregnant mothers and postpartum mothers will be less likely to suffer from pregnancy-related depression and other pregnancy-related mental health, with a greater emphasis on this need. We do believe this is wide-reaching, and it really can be the difference between life and death for Kentucky mothers. Kentucky, sadly, has one of the worst maternal mortality rates in the country, and we're looking to get upstream of that. We really want to work towards a solution. In 2017, nearly half of the maternal deaths in Kentucky were related to substance use disorder. We believe that over 90% of those deaths are preventable. So please listen to our experts.
Thank you, Sir Chair, and members of the committee, Senator, for having me today. Thank you. My name is Christina Libby, and I live and work here in Frankfort. I was asked to speak today because I'm often found at the intersection of perinatal and postpartum health and mental health. Sometimes I'm found at that intersection playing the role of traffic cop, navigating new parents, and other times I'm just found sitting in the intersection crying. I've lived with mental health issues my entire life, though it's only been over recent decades with the very intentional destigmatization and awareness that I've come to understand this. After having my first child, I would drive 45 minutes to a place called the Diaper Fairy Cottage in Louisville, where a glorious woman named Emily McKay ran a group called Afterglow. It's hard to explain how sitting in a circle with other new moms, sipping tea, and simply talking about how simultaneously glorious and horrid new parenthood can be can save a person, but it did. And in large part because of that experience, I began facilitating a new mom group here in Frankfurt at the Paul Sawyer Public Library called Milestones and Meltdowns. Sitting again in a circle of new moms every week, hearing their roses and thorns. Seeing again the magic of being in community with other people who got it, who wouldn't try to make the pain go away with cliches about the passage of time, but would actually sit with you in it. And then when I had my second son, I experienced severe perinatal and postpartum depression. Depression is a very convincing liar, and the voice in my head was certain that I was the exception to all of the platitudes. I had a friend who made an Excel spreadsheet of therapists in my area, and it was unfortunately difficult to find any that both took my insurance and specialized in maternal mental health. And I honestly saw multiple therapists in the span of a couple years before I found someone that I felt like I could talk to. I used to be hesitant to speak publicly about my struggles with mental health issues, in part because my mother, as I believe many mothers do, feels my pain as acutely as if it were her own. She wishes that she could have protected me, or at the very least been there to help me more, but it's impossible to help someone with a problem that they won't talk about. But thanks to my own many years of therapy, I'm learning to accept that attempting to protect my mom from my pain is as useless as her trying to prevent me from experiencing it. I feel like as Americans, we're so proud of our rugged individualism that we forget that soft and vulnerable community is especially necessary in a time of healing. And if the time after bringing a new baby into your life is anything, it's a time of healing and not just for your body. And so I'm here today because I feel that this bill puts the right people at the table to facilitate that healing on a societal level. Thank you.
And thank you, Dr. Ashley Belcher.
Oh, sorry. Good morning. Thank you, Chair Carroll and Vice Chair Adams, for the opportunity to present information on SB 135 to you and members of the Senate Families and Children's Committee. My name is Dr. Ashley Belcher, and I am a licensed clinical psychologist practicing at Commonwealth Therapy Louisville, where I treat a range of patients, including those with perinatal mental health disorders. I am representing Kentucky Psychological Association, whose members have had input on this bill since 2022 General Assembly session. Early in my career, I became determined to improve the mental health and quality of life for children. Through working with children, I witnessed the myriad of problems that growing families face due to perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. While previously working in primary care as a behavioral health consultant, I saw the disparity of follow-up care for those in the postpartum phase compared to other illnesses. While it is true that pregnancy and postpartum are not illnesses, it is nevertheless a delicate time period which requires attention to care to promote the best outcomes. These clinical experiences ignited a passion for reducing barriers to treatment and increasing support for families in this delicate and challenging time of life. The perinatal period is defined as the time spanning from conception to 1 year after birth, and research has shown that during this time frame there is a vulnerability to mental health disorder. Perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, referred to as PMADs, are common, and their negative effects can be catastrophic for families and communities. PMADs can include major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, and several other mental illnesses like psychosis or bipolar disorder. Substance use disorders can also be exacerbated by the perinatal period. While these illnesses can affect anyone at any stage of life, the perinatal period poses an increased risk and creates a unique presentation with regards to symptoms. Unfortunately, these illnesses often go undiagnosed and untreated as a result. Perinatal mood and anxiety disorders affect 1 in 5 women and 1 in 10 men. And and the prevalence rate for PMADs in fathers jumps to 50% when their partner is clinically depressed or anxious. For some, the perinatal phase exacerbates existing symptoms, but for a large majority, symptoms actually begin during the perinatal period for the very first time in a person's life. This leaves individuals without an understanding of what they are experiencing or how to go about seeking help, and they often feel considerable shame for experiencing the symptoms. Every year, more than 400,000 infants are born to mothers who are depressed, which makes perinatal depression one of the most underdiagnosed obstetric complications in the U.S. When we think of complications in pregnancy, perhaps we think of gestational diabetes or preeclampsia or gestational hypertension, yet those complications occur in less than half as many people as PMADs do. So you might wonder, what's at stake here? Well, if left untreated, PMADs have been linked to increased medical costs, increased risk for inappropriate medical care. They are linked to increased prevalence of child abuse, neglect, intimate partner violence, and divorce. People struggling with mental illness are more likely to discontinue breastfeeding, file for disability or unemployment, and experience financial hardships. There is also a correlation between PMADs and adverse effects on early brain development in children. And tragically, PMADs have been linked directly to infanticide, homicide, and suicide. Demographics play an important role in the risk for PMADs, and racial disparities exist. People of color have a higher maternal mortality rate, increased prevalence of PMADs, increased teen pregnancy rates, lower rates of breastfeeding, and poorer quality of and access to obstetric and mental health care. These disparities are particularly pronounced for Black mothers, so it is clear that more must be done to support people of color with regards to perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. Age plays a role as well, with teenage parents experiencing higher prevalence of these issues. Parenting is one of the most rewarding and impactful jobs of a lifetime, yet it is certainly one of the most challenging. Supporting the mental health of parents, particularly mothers, will undoubtedly create a ripple effect of positive benefits throughout our community. SB 135 will assure that educational materials about mental health issues are made available to mothers and other family members right at the time of birth. Having discussions about PMADs and providing education reduces shame and stigma for struggling parents. This bill will encourage healthcare providers who see the mom in the perinatal period to discuss mental health concerns that the mother may have, more quickly identify those with perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, and provide answers for how to seek help. And the bill requires the Cabinet for Health and Family Services to pull together all of the stakeholders, health and mental health providers, training programs, maternal advocates, and women with lived experience to talk with each other and Cabinet officials to improve screening and education, plug the gaps where racial disparities are the most apparent, to offer more supports and resources to new mothers and their families, and to seek out funding to train more maternal mental health professionals. This bill is a fantastic start to increasing the health and wellness of families. On behalf of psychologists and other maternal mental health providers, I ask for your support of SB 135. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Senator Merritt, you have a question, sir?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you, and appreciate the testimony. Many of the members of this committee are also on Health Services Committee, and we had Dr. Jeffrey Goldberg talk about this very subject a couple of weeks ago. And this is a continuation, I believe, of Senator Rocky Adams' efforts. Last session was Senate Bill 95, and so this is certainly long overdue. But very enlightening testimony. Dr. Particular regard, you said that men suffer from this as well. I guess the prevalence isn't near what women do, but I found that a very interesting subject in itself. Can you elaborate on that just a little bit?
Yes, the men experience PMADs in addition to women, and it's actually been shown that their hormones are changing as well in the perinatal and postpartum phase. And so we believe that some of this is hormone related, but also there's just an undeniable amount of adjustment that must be done to become a parent. and to become the best parent that the person can be. And I think that the stress of that is certainly something we need to take into account, particularly with fathers, and they have a unique set of stresses as well. There are times when men maybe don't feel equipped to take on some of the same things that the women do, and they might not feel like they're supporting their spouse in the way that they'd like to. And so I think because they have their own set of stresses, it's important that whoever's working with them be trained in addressing and listening to those stresses that men face specifically.
Well, thank you. That's very interesting. And I certainly support passage of this bill and just encourage our other committee members to support it as well. But I just want to make note, I think this is just the start, that we really need to do a much deeper dive on this. And the testimony I heard, which you've reiterated today, that 90% of the deaths related to this could be preventable. And when you have a statistic that's solid, that alarming, then certainly it can't be ignored any longer. And as I'm very fond of saying, is we don't ever measure the cost of doing nothing, and it is quite significant. If we would take time to look at that, then we'd understand the full implications of this. But appreciate the bill, appreciate your testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. See no other questions. Is there a motion? We have a motion, Senator Adams. Second, Senator Westerfield. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Rocky Adams, Senator Girdler, Senator Harper Angel,
Explain my vote, Mr. Chairman.
Please proceed.
Senator Funky Frommer, this is excellent legislation. I thank you for bringing it. I, in fact, co-sponsored with Senator Rocky Adams 95 last year. As we spoke last night, I told you that I had a concern with the committee sub removing the language regarding postpartum care. And I'm happy that Dr. Belcher has explained that that is, in fact, covered up to a year. Thank you very much. I vote aye.
Senator Bledsoe, Senator Meredith, Senator Tishner, Senator Webb, Senator Westerfield, Senator Wise, Chairman Carroll.
Vote aye. The bill passes unanimously with favorable expression. 9-0. We also have a title amendment. Is there a motion on the title amendment? Second. All those in favor? Opposed? Title amendment is adopted also. Senator Funky Fromeyer, congratulations. Look forward to this bill moving forward on the Senate floor, and thank you, ladies, so much for being here today. Appreciate your testimony.
We are so grateful for you making this a priority on your agenda as well, Senator Carroll. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Okay, the next item on the agenda is for educational purposes for this committee. And oftentimes we hear from people who sit in offices all day, and we really don't hear from those who are on the front lines of various issues. So today we're going to hear from those who work the front lines. We have 4 social workers from across the Commonwealth that are here today. And folks, if you all would, please come to the table. And so the idea today is just to kind of get from a frontline point of view the struggles that these ladies have from day to day in their jobs. And, you know, I spent many years working with social workers as a law enforcement officer and worked side by side on many cases. And I don't think that a lot of people really understand the struggles that they go through each day and balancing the needs of each family that they deal with. And so that's why we're here today. And ladies, I want to thank you so much for being here. I would ask each one of you to please introduce yourselves for the record. And we can just start in whatever order you all would like and ask you to take maybe 10 minutes so we can save some time for questions.
Good morning. Thank you for having us. My name is Layla Kingsland. I am from Fayette County, the Southern Bluegrass Service Region. I have been a social worker with the cabinet for the last almost 13 years, 14 if we include the year that I was a student within the same office. I'm currently on a veteran team focusing on all of our adolescents. So primary composition of our caseload is 13 to 21 youth. Within that population, we have a lot of our high acuity youth. Those tend to be our higher needs kids, whether it's mental health, behaviors, or whatever may be happening as far as permanency planning or being able to provide for their safety. Those kiddos tend to be on our caseloads. Unfortunately, we have had to, in recent years, spend quite a bit of time in our offices, begging, calling in favors, trying to get these kiddos placed. So that's one of the biggest stressors that we're currently facing. We do not have the foster homes or residential placements, really, for some of these youth. Thanks to Senate Bill 200, I think we've also started taking on a lot more of the DJJ type youth that we no longer have facilities to be able to house or keep safe or to keep the community safe. Like I said, I'm out of Fayette County, so Lexington, we are having an uptick in crime, and we're having 16, 17-year-olds who are being charged with murder, and the cabinet's being asked to find placements for them. There is no nice way to spin that. It does not matter how wonderful they are. It does not matter that they are straight A students and on the football team. That's something that's going to follow them, and it's a very hard sell when it comes to finding a placement. One of the biggest struggles, I think, also is the high turnover that we've had, both as an agency as well as a county. On average, all of our workers are carrying at least 35 cases. Within those 35 cases, it could be anywhere from 45 to 60 to 80 kiddos that have to be seen every single month, and 80 home visits in a month with travel when our kids are placed all over the state is near impossible. One of the biggest advantages that we've had, and one of the things that has worked for us over the last 2 years, has been the fact that we've had the ability to have some virtual visits. Of course, with the state of emergency ending, our concern is that we're not going to be able to utilize that as a way to check in on our kiddos and kind of prioritize the more high-risk cases that need more attention versus the cases that, you know, we can come out and see you every other month and things are going to be okay. So for us, that's definitely a concern going into the next month when the emergency expires and we are back to full-time everything in person. Fayette County has family court twice. Well, technically 4 times, but it's 2 full days, so Mondays and Wednesdays. Most of our workforce is in court every Monday and Wednesday for the full workday. While we're in court, we're doing reports for the following week, trying to schedule meetings, doing all kinds of phone calls and everything else to try to squeeze in as much multitasking as we possibly can. But that still leaves us with 3 days of actual work days. One of the biggest things that I can stress, since I'm just going to use the last 3 months as a marker. In the last 3 months, weekends included, I have worked all but 4 days in order to be able to meet the criteria to see my kids, make sure they're okay, make sure that they have the visits that they need. So ultimately, there's just not enough time. And short of our workforce doubling, I don't know how we're going to get to a point where we are able to effectively provide the support for the families that we serve. While we have a fantastic police department, we've had police tell us that they're not going out to home visits with us because of the neighborhood that they're in or the situation that we're being called out on. Just because they're not coming out, that doesn't mean that we're not going to go out with our notepad and a pen and try to figure out what's going on, how we can best protect the family, make sure that the kids are safe, and figure out where we go from there. The other thing that is a huge, huge concern for us, and we recently were reviewing the bill that's I believe on the Senate floor with regards to telecommuting ending. Those tend to be the only days that we catch up on paperwork. when we are not in the office, because if you are in the office, chances are someone's popping into your office, someone's asking for a favor, hey, can you do this, can you do that? And our ability to catch up on paperwork and document the work that we're actually putting in goes out the window. It is extremely concerning that that's a possibility to go away. And if it does leave, will that cause half of our workforce that we worked really hard to recruit and hire with all the pay raises that we've recently received and are appreciative for, will they leave again? Because then those cases will have to be reassigned, and we're going to be back in even more unmanageable caseload carrying. As far as our investigative units, our ongoing unit in Fayette County carried cases, regular ongoing cases, as well as took on investigations for the entire 2022, because we had a total of 5 investigators for the entire county of Fayette. So if we have 5 investigators, 5 to 10 investigations coming in on a good day, and 20 to 30 investigations coming in on a bad day, there's no way for that to be manageable. We had, majority of the year, we also had 1 specialized investigator. The specialized investigator is the person who investigates near fatality and fatality cases, sexual abuse, and any facility abuse cases. And still, she is over 100 cases, even now that we have another person on that team. It is an unmanageable workload. Personally, why I do this, I love my job. I love my kids. I went into this as, excuse me, I went into this because it was an easy way to pay for college, right? I was a PCW CP, and for those of you who are not familiar, it's a cabinet program that recruits social work students to come in and work for the cabinet for 2 years. For me, it was a great way not to be buried in student loan debt. I started a long, long time ago at this point, it feels like, but I never left. My 2 years came up, and I fell in love with the kids. I go back to, oh my gosh, this did not happen when I was preparing this. One of my very first cases, on my first day, I received 2 cases. The first one was at the time, 15-year-old girl. She was in a residential facility. She called me. I had not even gotten to the file because, again, my first day. And she asked me if I could come and visit her at her residential facility. Thank you. I visited with her. She eventually completed that program, went to a foster home, graduated from high school, was able to reunify with her family. Fast forward 4 years later, she actually became a certified foster parent, adopted a kiddo that's higher risk, higher need kiddo out of foster care. She is now a community partner. So now I get to sit in meetings with her and have the collaboration with a kiddo that I worked with for 3.5 years, seeing that full circle moment, seeing her succeed, seeing her take a child out of the foster care system to be able to provide a stable, nurturing, and loving home. That's why we do this. We care about the kids, but the expectations that are on us are extremely unrealistic for all the passion that we have. And I think the 4 of us have a ton of passion, or otherwise we wouldn't be here. It gets to a point where it's a breaking point. We have fantastic supervisors, or at least I can speak for myself. I have a fantastic supervisor. I've had 3 supervisors since I've been with the state, and each and every single one of them has gone on to take on higher positions, and they continue to be a support for the frontline staff. That matters. The fact that, again, I'm on a veteran team working with teenagers who give you so much reward coming back with all of their successes, whether it's graduations, proms, getting into college, getting their driver's licenses, or whatever it is. We get to celebrate those little milestones, and that's what keeps me coming back every single day.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I thank you so much. Please, if something has already been said, we're going to have to hurry for time because I want to be able to have some questions. And if you want to introduce yourself for the record, and maybe 6-7 minutes, please.
Sure. My name is Ashley Dodsworth. I'm from Jefferson County. I've worked with the cabinet twice. I left after 4 years and then I came back. And I solely came back because it was a job that I knew. I'd love to say that it was because I had passion and I was in love with the job, but to be fair, I came back because I knew how to do it. I currently have 30 ongoing cases, 17 active investigations with 65 children. Each of those children has at least one parent, an aunt, an uncle. They all have their own providers that they work with, and I have to see each and every one of those parents and each and every one of those children each month. Currently, because I am one person against 65, I have to make the decision each month about whether or not I am going to see a child or not. And so there are kids on my caseload each month that are not being seen because I'm one person. Our kids are all over the state. We currently in Jefferson County, there's at least 1 or 2 workers each week sleeping in the office with a child because the entire state of Kentucky has said no. The entire state of Kentucky has said no to a kid for a myriad of reasons, but the majority of the time I'm getting a statewide rejection is because a child is 13 to 18 years old. And we are tasked as workers to tell a child as we're handing them a pillow and a blanket to sleep on an office chair that there's nowhere for them to go. And you're trying to sell it to them. You're trying to make them feel loved because obviously they're a foster child. And I've had kids look me straight in the face and say, Miss Ashley, why does no one want me? And I have to look at them and I have to come up with some BS answer because I'm looking at a baby and I'm looking at them in the face and I'm saying it's not fair. Because a child should never have to be told that there is no one in the state of Kentucky that will take them. And I'm currently working on at least sending 3 of my kids out of state, New Mexico, California, and Texas, because the entire state of Kentucky says no. Our foster parents are not taking our teenagers. They refuse. They want our babies that are quote unquote untouched by trauma. And of course, we know that's not true. New scientific evidence is showing that there are children who are impacted by trauma even in utero. So before they even come and are born, they are impacted by trauma. And so there's no such thing as a child in foster care, period, or a child that's involved with child welfare that hasn't been touched by trauma. But our foster parents simply somehow have come to the realization, you can see it all over the Facebook when you're on the groups, the state is known as a free adoption agency, and we are not. Our first priority is reunification, and we work tirelessly every day to return our babies home if we can, if it's safe for them. But unfortunately, because I'm one person up against 65 children, there are sometimes we get it wrong. Because we do have to make the choice about whether or not I see a kid this month or if I wait until next month. And sometimes we get it wrong, and it's terrible when it does. But of course, we take that on. But I'm one person against 65 kids, and I just can't. I can't possibly spend hours in the car. Jefferson County has court 3 days a week. We have 10 family court judges, and oftentimes we're going to court. You've got 4, 5, 6, 7 cases in 3 different divisions. So while I'm sitting there in court juggling 4 or 5 cases, I'm also answering the phone. I'm trying to take in new reports because Jefferson County is currently we're both investigating and we're doing our ongoing cases at the same time, which is why I have 30 ongoing and about 17 active investigations right now. So unfortunately, we are tasked with the decision of, is this kid safe for now, or are they not safe? And I have to prioritize the kids that are not currently safe. So the reason I do this job is I'm a child born to addiction. I was lucky enough to have a mom that decided to give me up for adoption. I have a half sister who was not so lucky and unfortunately was in situations that no child should have to go through. So I do this job because I feel like I owe it to the kids that are not as lucky as I was, that I was fortunate enough to be able to avoid being involved in child welfare. So I do this for those kids that are not so lucky. And each of those kids are my kids. I take them home with me every day. My husband even tells me all the time, you care too much. But in my opinion, you can't care enough. These are kids. They don't deserve to be a part of this. They didn't ask to be a part of this. And so I'm going to work every day and I'm going to show up even on the days that I am tired. We are drowning. We are in the middle of canoes that have holes on the bottom and we are desperately trying to get the water to stop coming into our canoes. But we're showing up for our kids because if we don't, there isn't anybody else. When we take a day off, there is no one to take our caseloads. If we have medical leave, if we're out on vacation, etc., my 65 kids are sitting there and they're waiting for me. And when I get back, I will pick up all 65 of them again and I will put them on my back and I will carry them with me. Until we hire more workers and until we get foster parents who are willing to take our kids and say yes to children, then we're going to continue to take on water and we're going to continue to drown. Thank you.
Ashley, thank you so much. if you would please introduce yourself for the record and make your comments.
My name is Danelle Eversole. I am from Eastern Mountain Region, Perry County. I currently have 22 cases. That's sounding manageable as it is. Those 22 cases actually result in about 42 home visits because you have to visit the child, you have to visit the parent, and sometimes the children are split between relatives or foster homes. A lot of these visits have to be done outside of our regular hours, which entails overtime for us. It takes us away from our families even more than we already are. And taking away that ability for the virtual visits would alleviate some, or allowing the virtual visits to continue would alleviate some of that problem. I've been here almost 8 years. I have seen, the recent staff shortage. It puts a complete, it's a ridiculous amount of strain on a worker that already has so much that they take home with them every day. There's nobody at this table that has not lost sleep at night over a child. There is nobody at this table that has not answered a phone after hours, that has not went above and beyond what their actual job duties are to ensure that a child has what they need, whether it be at the time of the removal or whether it be 6 months out after the removal. We are the only consistent that some of these children have in their lives. They can be removed and literally never see their parent again. The parent walks away. So we are the only thing that they consistently have in their life. Positive parts of the job, that makes you feel really good sometimes. I have 2 kids that will call me on Sundays. They FaceTime me, actually, and, whether it's about their jobs, whether it's about a new car, whether it's about just their week, they call me to tell me that because they don't have anybody else to tell that. So on Sunday, it's a guarantee. Around noon, when they roll out of bed, they're going to call me and tell me about their week. And that is something that keeps me here. Another thing that keeps me here is just, these are my kids. Like they've said, these are my kids. I refer to them as my boys or my girls, or, it is, you develop an attachment to these kids. You see them go through the worst of the worst, and you have to, like Ashley was saying, reassure them in the worst of times that no, there is nothing wrong with you. The state of Kentucky, nobody wants you, but it is not you. There is nothing wrong with you as a child. We are here for you. We're doing whatever we can, but there is nothing, this is not your fault. This is not a real, this does not reflect you as a child. This is not what, you are not the cause that you have to sleep in this office tonight. That's part of our system that's broken, that we desperately need fixed. Another reason I say, and it's a joking thing, my mom says I have a really good retirement. So when I started in 2015, but I had previously done some substitute teaching. So it grandfathered me in as a tier 1. So I think that's a lot of the reason that we don't recruit or retain the workers like we did in the past, because previously, people would work for the state for less money because the retirement was so good. You worked because you wanted that retirement, and that's kept me from leaving, or it's been a factor in keeping me from leaving on 2 occasions. And I may have said this already. Another reason I can't leave is because I can't deal with the guilt from leaving the kids. I'm the consistent. I'm what they've known since that day of that removal, and I can't walk out on them like everybody else has. I have to stay. Before I finish, the fact that you have us here, the fact that you're asking us questions, the fact that we have been heard as far as the raises and just the acknowledgement that you don't know, you're not aware of what we do. You need to dig deeper to find out what all we do on a daily basis. And, you know, unless you're there for an entire week and you see, and there's so much we don't even give ourselves credit for that we do. But just the fact that you're asking, just the fact that you want to know, just the fact that you're interested and you're showing that, I am so appreciative of that. And I know everybody else is too. I'm so grateful that, you know, it is finally brought to attention, and it's aware that there are issues, and you're trying to address those issues, and you're trying to, you know, it didn't break overnight, so it's not going to be fixed overnight. But just the fact that you are here and, you know, you're acknowledging, I appreciate that so much. So.
Thank you very much. Last but not least, Dominique.
Yes, good morning, Chair and the committee. Thank you so much for allowing us to be here. My name is Dominic Stewart, and I am representing the Western Kentucky region. My primary duty station is in Todd County, but as it goes with the entire state and my comrades here, wherever we're needed is where we are. So that may mean that we handle specialized investigations in Christian County and Jefferson County. Wherever we're needed is where we are. I've been with the cabinet for roughly about 5 years. Prior to that, I serviced social work with the U.S. military. My reason for coming here was, I was telling my comrades, was for a challenge. And I definitely have overseeked that challenge. My challenge being, and Dr. Martin Luther King said something that stuck with me throughout my internship, and it was simply, life's most urgent question is, what are you doing for others? And while working with the military, I couldn't answer that question adequately. And the reason I couldn't is because our resources were ever so present. It was easy. Working with the cabinet, it's not always that way. And sad to say that over the 5 years that I've been with the cabinet, it's still that way. In Western Kentucky, some of the biggest challenges we have, and it's been overly stated today, is our staff shortages. Our staff shortages, currently I carry a caseload between an average of 35 to 40 cases. Of those 35 to 40 cases, one case itself could have 3 children. Of those 3 children, one could be placed in Jefferson County, which in a day's drive for me to see that child is a 6-hour trip in the car. And then might add on the time that I'm actually spending with that child during the visit. So you might say about a 7 to 8 hour day with no lunch. Sometimes I've left home before the start of my day, and I definitely get home well after the end of my day. And so you think about that times 5 cases, it amplifies our time outside of the office. My county in specific, over the last 2 years, we've operated at less than 50% for the last 2 years. Of the last year of that, I was the only worker in the office outside of my supervisor. So what does that look like? There's no more teams. Our comrades have stated today that there may be an ongoing or investigation. I'm clustered into all of it. So I may have an investigation, but then one of my kids who have of eye acuity, meaning that they may have specialized mental health needs or behavioral needs, or it just may be a specialized case all within itself. I have to stop what I'm doing, go to that child, be there for them because I'm their ever-present help. And then while helping that child, I may get another email that says, hey, you've got a 4-hour investigation. You need to boot it back to the county so that you can make time frame. And if those time frames are not met, then we'll definitely get an email, or we'll definitely be met by the metrics that have been set before us. Our SOP is currently aligned with KRS, but sometimes there are blurred lines. We've talked about going to court. Sometimes in court, it makes our stance very difficult. In court, we have to testify between the facts that we found out this is the reason, Your Honor, as to why we removed that child. But when we look at KRS, the lines may be blurred as to, hey, I'm sorry, this is not legally standing. But then we're looking at it as the social worker to say, but this is what's going to keep this child safe. And so at that point, we've got an overturned conviction and trying to figure out, okay, how do we keep this child safe? Because that's what we've been commissioned to do. I'm going to try to wrap this up because I want you guys to have questions. Outside of that, the challenge in our staff has also been the resources within our region. You think about our other regions that are represented here today, because they're larger cities, they're larger resources, they're larger, places where people can get substance abuse help or mental health abuse help. In our region, there are little to none. Or if there are resources, there are of adversary towards the clients that we service. When I think about our job, it's a job of inclusive diversity Diversity goes beyond race. It goes beyond culture, right? As I look around this room, we're all diversified in whatever way of life you come from. And so whereas our goal is always reunification, sometimes that goal is, to be blatantly honest, unreachable, because I'm trying to reach this family culturally where they are. And where they are may not be the metrics that have been set before me to make them reach, because that's just not where they were to begin with. I'm just trying to help you get to a safer point for you and your children. But to do that, that means that I need you to drive 2 hours away once a week, every week, for mental health counseling, knowing good and well that you didn't have gas money to get your child to school when they missed the bus when I removed your child. So these are some of the challenges that we face. We talked about it earlier about sometimes we don't have the support of law enforcement. No shade, Senator. But sometimes our, law enforcement, they don't see the dire need that we do, right? And we can't ask them to have the same passion that we do, because although we are aligned, our creeds are different. For me, my passion of staying here was simply because this job is ministry first, paycheck second, or else I really would not be here. I can remember the day that I had to spend the night in the office with a 17-year-old runaway juvenile, African-American. He had needed 80-day accommodations. And everywhere in this state, systemically, it's so broken, we could not find a place for him to go. And I lost it. I emailed my SRAA, Renee Buckingham, and I said, you can have it. I'm done. Because out of all the millions of dollars that we pay federally, all the millions of dollars that we pay at a state level, for all these places, these facilities, you're telling me that systemically there's not one place that can take this child just because he's in a wheelchair. When we went to court the next day, our judge had the same song and sermon. You mean to tell me there's not one detention center in this state that's willing to take this young man just because he has to be accommodated by a wheelchair? Those are restraints that we can't fix. But what we can fix are things that are, I think that, there's nothing worth fighting for if there isn't a challenge. And I think that each of us show up each day to fight that challenge. There are things that are working. It's not all bad. Things that are working is that we have received the raises, and we're so appreciative of those. That's been very enticing to other social workers everywhere. To be able to show them that we can pay you for your internship. We can work it out. I know that when I talk to people that I know, that, hey, come over to the state side, leave government for a second. I tell them about the teleworking. Well, if that goes away, I'm not sure how that's going to work out, right? Because that creates life-work balance. We're human too. Whereas we are a power source of support for these children and their families, we need sanity too. So to work from home sometimes lets me breathe, lets the school not call me and disrupt my day to say, hey, can you come out here? I got a situation. Law enforcement may call, hey, I need you to do a welfare check with me. The judge may call, hey, I need you to run over to the courthouse real quick. I need you to do something. The day is always interrupted. And in order to reach those metrics, I need a quiet space to work, right? Working a hybrid schedule allows you to be human for a second. We were talking about our virtual visits. Being able to see those children who may not be of high acuity on a video screen, as ideal as it may not be, it's working, right? Our numbers went successfully to a very high success rate over the last 2 years, just being able to see a kid over the computer screen. And it also allowed us to maintain our attachment to that kid, right? When you're in a car for 6 hours a day and you've got 3 kids, I did it last night before we came here. I spent 6 hours in the car going to go see my kids. Well, those visits get shorter and shorter because I know I've got to get to the next kid, right? And so you lose that bond, that attachment, finding out what's really going on in their head, find out how they're really being affected by the different things that they're having to face in out-of-home care. But being on a virtual screen, I can spend a little bit more time because I'm not having to worry about booting it back to the county to be, be there to handle whatever I need to say. In short, I feel as though we're making great changes. I feel as though we're making great progress. But no shade to anyone here. You can't possibly understand what we do or make the decisions based upon what we do unless we continue to have these type of conversations. Absolutely. To understand where the holes are, understand how to plug them, how to fix them, how to soothe the wounds. I'm very, very grateful to know that we are mending that wound of the staff shortage, which I think will assure a lack of apathy that we've had over the past, because let's face it, burnout is a real thing. When you've got a higher caseload, just because I'm having to fill the shoes of on a team that should be 4 and it's only 1 person, you're going to get burnt out. You're going to get tired. You're going to lose the compassion. Compassion fatigue is also a real thing. So I think that we're trending in a great way, but I'm grateful to know that you guys cared enough to know exactly what we do so that we can try to get to a better progress. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Meredith.
Thank you, Chairman Carroll. But first, just a couple of comments. First, thank you for bringing this to the table today. Ladies, I've been here 7 years, and this is probably the most powerful, heartfelt testimony I have ever heard. And I thank you for that and sharing that experience. You're right, we have no idea. We can only guess. But I hope we've evidenced to you what we did with the last budget cycle, and that you have our attention. But also, we took this action, what you're seeing today, to split our Health and Welfare Committee into Health Services, Family and Children's Services, because we know that we have put these issues on the back burner for too long. Again, I'll commend Chairman Carroll for this change as well. We've worked on this to make sure that you get the attention that you need. And I appreciate your comment that this is not going to be solved easily. It's not. But please know that we are committed to address this. You know, we don't have it from the extent that you folks do, but we're tired too of seeing the aftermath of all this. And I just commend you so much. You're truly heroes. And on behalf of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, thank you. You truly are angels walking on the face of the earth, and we could have more of you. And again, Chairman Carroll, I appreciate you bringing this to our agenda today, and look forward to our continued work in the future on these matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And, you know, so many times in these committees, we get packaged presentations that really they're designed to make us think everything is great within certain programs. And that's not the approach this committee is going to take from its inception. And I appreciate your emotional, raw emotions and your responses and your honesty. We don't get that a whole lot. And I want to thank Secretary Friedlander. I had a conversation with him the other day, and he made it clear to me I did not pick and choose these folks that are coming, and they will be free to speak. And you have done that, and I appreciate that so much. Senator Bledsoe.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know where to start. So I'll say thank you for having the testimony, because I think you're exactly right. Hearing from front workers is so important. 2 kids are worth fighting for. So thank you for fighting for kids. Thank you for choosing to do it as a ministry out of love and care and not for a paycheck. There's no way you would do what you're doing for that. The emotional toll, the physical toll is immense. And so I just want to say thank you for you and everybody you work with, for your compassion and for your love for kids. As a mom of a 15 and 11-year-old, I can't imagine telling a kid that no one is taking them in. I cannot imagine. Those are conversations that are heartbreaking at the basic, and have long-time trauma, not to mention what they've already been through. So I have several friends actually who have been foster families, and I've walked with them a little bit, through their journeys, and we have a lot to fix. From just hearing their stories and trying to do what they think is best, listening to what you're going through. I know Lexington police don't do that by policy. It's nothing to do with the neighborhood. They just don't do it by policy. That's a separate conversation. The need is great. The challenges are immense. But I think everybody that I know who does this work cares about kids. They care about kids, and we do too. And so I've taken a lot of notes, and I'm committed to continue working towards fixing it and making it better and making every kid in the Commonwealth feel like they matter and they're loved and they have a future. And we need to do whatever we can to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I read, we've been doing a lot of work on DJJ, and I had the honor of chairing the working group over the past month, and we have some policy that's going to be coming forward. And during my research for that group, I read an article that said if states do not look at the population that you all serve, at the same time we're looking at juvenile justice issues, we're making a huge mistake because it's the same population. Yes. And so we need to, as we move forward in looking at DJJ, Senator Westerfield and I spoke about that this morning, some things that we're looking for long-term, digging really deep into the weeds to look at this. We have to make sure that we keep that in mind as we move forward, and to make sure that you all are involved in that as we move forward. But we have a long way to go, folks, and the passion that you all have, that's the passion that I remember from 13 years ago, working with our social workers back home, and they literally fought for their kids every day. And that's what it's all about. And we've got to remember that. And we've got to make sure this profession, that we show them the respect that they deserve, whether that be pay, benefits, whatever it is, to ensure that they're successful. Because with them, that's where our problems start. And if we don't address it at that level, it's why we have the problems we have right now. So we really do need to focus on this area. I want to try to summarize a little bit, ladies, if you don't mind. So obviously the staffing is an issue, and that's related to pay, benefits, and just getting more staffing so there's not so much overload. Do you all, just a simple yes or no, do you all see that getting somewhat better with the pay increases within your particular areas?
No.
I see.
Yes.
Kinda? No?
No.
Yes.
Yes?
In our region, it's getting there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So slowly improving in
Yes.
that area. Okay. And then having facilities to take kids that need to be in homes, and also with foster care, that's an issue.
Yes, huge.
The telehealth issue, being able to see it, are there issues with that? Are there the quality of you all, the follow-ups that you doing that through telehealth or televisits, I guess?
From our understanding, we were only allowed to do that, sir, because of the pandemic. And once that emergency bill goes away, then we're not able to do that.
How do you all feel that works for the quality of your visit being over the computer?
I think Dominic actually spoke about this earlier. I think the biggest concern is when we're spending 6-8 hours, like I have a kiddo in Fort Campbell. It's a 4-hour drive one way, 4-hour drive back. So the time that we have to spend with that kiddo is significantly shorter. So if we're able to even check in virtually, that's still giving us a little bit of a reprieve, because you can get a lot of stuff done in 8 hours instead of just sitting in the car and driving to get to that visit. Now, we're not saying this needs to be every month,
Right.
be across
Right.
the board, but it does give us a little bit of wiggle room
Because
to
it's
be
breathing.
able to check in on everybody.
Yeah.
And I call that telehealth. It's virtual visits.
Virtual visits.
Okay. And then the telework. And I've had some pretty strong feelings on but I know in my organization I have case managers. I have allowed them to continue working from home. It's worked.
That's all we're
The problem we have, I think, with the state, and we're going to wrap this up, is a lot of the customer service positions within the state, and I'm not talking just with you all, but that's been negatively affected by remote working. And that's my concern, that bill that's moving forward. There are positions that I think can function from home very effectively. There are some that can't, that really need to be in the office. And you all kind of affirmed that for me, that there is a place for that. And with all the burden that we place on you all, we need to give you some options. So am I missing anything that you all feel like that we can address that might help?
I don't know if you could address the law enforcement piece where we struggle sometimes to just have, I mean, we're going out into these homes that, like she had said, law enforcement doesn't want to go to. DV situations, which make me incredibly nervous, but we have to go. I mean, we have to go. And there's times that we will wait 3 and 4 hours for law enforcement to go with us, you know? And like Layla said, we're taking an ink pen and a piece of paper in where, you know, if it's a situation where it's a law enforcement called out, they're going in fully armed. So I don't know if it's something that you could address for support as far as, you know, them
law enforcement in general, just, supporting us when we have to go out for our safety, because that is one of the bigger concerns that I do. I worry, what am I going to walk into? When we get these reports, I'm sure I could probably speak for everybody at the table that we walk into homes where there's needles loaded, there's firearms out, it's a bad situation to be in there alone. And once you get in there and you're alone, it's questionable. Sometimes you think, how am I going to get out of this situation without me being directly hurt, or how can I get out of here and get back to my kids? So that's one of the concerns. That's one of the issues that I feel like we could really use some help with, as far as just law enforcement support.
Okay.
And because of staff shortages, there aren't enough people. You're going by yourself.
Right.
There are not enough workers to go under. So I had to call police because my life was threatened on Friday during a home visit. There was literally an aunt and a father physically fighting each other. I had to use my body to protect the child, to get him into his bedroom because the aunt was threatening the child. I had my pen, I had a notebook, I had my lanyard and a cell phone. I called police. They showed up 45 minutes later after I'd already calmed everybody down. And the aunt looked at me and she threatened me. She called me every name under the book and threatened me. And I had to use my voice because it's the only thing I had. And I was able to talk everybody down, but police showed up 45 minutes later there were 3 of them, and they all had their stuff. And I just kind of laughed because at that point I'm like, little too late. I've already been threatened. She's already threatened my child, and everyone is safe now, but I was by myself. My supervisor said, just leave. I can't leave. There is a child at risk, and I'm not going to leave that child at risk. My whole job is child protective services. And that meant I used my body, and I did. And I was fully prepared to take punches. Luckily, it didn't get to that point. I used my charm and my wit to get out of it, but I was ready. I was like, come, let's do this, because I wasn't going to leave that child. No matter what.
Senator Carroll, just real quick, if I may, on the western side, a biggest obstacle for us are resources. Like, we literally do not have enough resources to combat the growing substance abuse issues, to assist these families. Like, if our goal is going to be reunification, it makes it more difficult and more difficult to get to that goal.
And we're going to have to go. And I apologize for all my colleagues leaving. We had other committees this morning. Keep you all day asking you questions, but I won't do that. Yes or no on adoptions and reunification? Do we go too far sometimes in attempts to reunify that to where it's detrimental to the child?
Yes. Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. From the law enforcement side, and I'm not making excuses for anyone, but I know the staffing shortages that they have. Absolutely. I know the call volume. It hasn't always been that way. Back when I was on the streets, social worker needed us, we were there, but it was a different world then, and I try to be sensitive to that. So, but I know that's an area that we could do better on, and hopefully staffing issues within law enforcement will get better too, and everything will come back around. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for being honest and saying what's on your heart. And again, like Senator Meredith said, on behalf of this Commonwealth, we cannot thank you and all your colleagues enough for the work that you put in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will, the next committee will be next Tuesday, February 28th at 9 o'clock in this room. We stand adjourned.